Hi, I first met Jerry Anderson in Pennsylvania. In fact, we were in the same vehicle on our way to prophesy over a senator and to pray for the government buildings. And so I hadn't met him before, and I asked him, I said, share a little bit about who you are. He seemed to be a very quiet and very humble man. And I said, let me know, like, what do you do? And what do you feel about God and His kingdom? And he began to expound in such a gentle, such a humble way about how God had been using him to reach entire nations with the gospel, and how that there was transformation in entire prisons of nations and supreme courts and justice systems. And I was blown away. I thought, here's this humble, quiet man who's this powerhouse for God. I thought he was like, probably I was sitting in the same vehicle with someone like Joshua. And so it's my privilege to introduce Jerry Anderson. He's a very successful businessman who's also using his time to go and see nations transformed with the gospel by using biblical principles. Not always using the scriptures or the name of Jesus, but going in stealth mode, oftentimes sharing these principles, and then afterwards people come to know Jesus because Jesus is in the Word. In fact, Jesus is the Word. And so here's Jerry Anderson now to share a story about how God invaded Columbia prisons. It's awesome.
LORED is an organization, a training organization since 1989, and it was really thought that was for the United States. When God gave us the vision through our founder, John Schrock, who today is 78 years old, living in Ohio, we thought the United States was the place that needed these values and principles that we grew our businesses on. And I was in publishing in California, and John and Bernie in publishing in Ohio, and we've seen our businesses totally change and turn around to God's favor. And when we sold those businesses, we knew that we was to help other businessmen and women around the United States. Well, it was like pushing a wagon uphill, and we ended up in Guatemala and Mexico and Colombia. And God told us in 1989 that nations would come to us for answers. And so all those years that we were traveling throughout those nations, throughout South and Central America and Europe and Africa and Asia, we're waiting for the nations to call. And about 5 years ago, Colombia called, and they said, would you train 11,500 employees? And we thought, finally, yes, we knew this was God calling. And so we went to Colombia, and we found out the 11,500 employees, they were employees of the government, but they were 11,500 prison guards. Prison guards. And we thought, well, we're not in the prison ministry. But I really felt that God said, wait a minute, what about Joseph, who went to the prisons innocently and ended up running the prison, and then he came out and ran the nation? How many Josephs are in the prisons of Colombia, where there's one killing every day in Colombia prisons? There's hatred and gangs and prostitution, gambling, drugs, and bribes. Oh, the bribes were going all the way to the top. And there was a general that said, today is a day of history for Colombia. And he had the news cameras and his top people there, and he said, today is a day of history. We're not going to change the prisons with more guns, where they house 75,000 prisoners in 142 prisons, but we're going to change the prisons with values and principles through the minds of people. And since I'm the leader, it starts with me, and I'm asking you to follow. Well, over the next 6 months, we started to work with just the leadership, and from the leadership, they started to work with the guards. The change, the transformation that took place, the guards going to the prisoners and asking them for forgiveness, and within months, the guards, the prisoners started to write to the government, please, we want what the guards have. We want to become like the guards. Only God can change a prison like God changed the prisons of Colombia. I remember just a year and a half ago, maybe 3 years had passed, meeting with the top general in charge at this time, and he said, Jerry, last year we had 2 killings in the entire prisons of Colombia. He said, what a transformation that took place. Wow. Only God can make a change like that through what I believe Moses was doing with the second generation of teaching values and principles in Deuteronomy 28. If you do these things, you'll be the head, not the tail. God's so good today.